Good afternoon, all. On this, what might be a snowy afternoon, we here like to open up our public hearing of the Commerce Committee today. And first off, we would like to invite up Representative Wilson, Darrell Wilson.
Yep.
And good afternoon, Darrell. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you guys for having me. Greetings to the chairs, Representative Meskers, Senator Hartley, ranking members, Senator Martin, Representative Vaniscovich. I'm here, of course. My name is Representative Darrell Wilson to oppose certain sections of Senate Bill 307. Because it threatens the vital support for minority-owned businesses by removing the word minority and altering targeted programs and funds. Minority businesses across this country, including Connecticut, have struggled to gain access to true economic power and generational wealth for far too long. In this bill, we are stripping, renaming programs and funds, eliminating words, minorities, and sections meant to benefit small minority-owned businesses. The need for that I want to remind this body is that many of my ancestors and many of those small business owners' ancestors have bled for the opportunity to own a business in this country. And when you look at it, we look at privilege, power, and accessible opportunities don't exist for every single minority business in the way that it should. And I strongly disagree with changing anything that aligns us with the current federal administration in Washington and what they would want us to do. If you haven't heard loud and clear from a lot of the members of the Black and Puerto Rican Caucus over the last few sessions, diversity, equity, and inclusion are here to stay in Connecticut. We are not accepting anything less than when it comes to the opportunities provided to members of our community, and the elimination of the word minority and changing the names such as the Minority Business Revolving Loan Fund, the Minority Business Innovative Advisory Board, or even the Office of Small Business Affairs, for us is unacceptable. We have fought hard and long in this building to get a foot in the door, and certain parts of SB 7 take us a step back. Let's not forget that we had a disparity study that was conducted and completed and concluded that less than 1% of many of the money that comes out in the state of Connecticut went to small minority-owned businesses. Our contractors and our minority businesses have struggled far too long, and because of policies and advancements and hurdles, they continue to be hindered in their ability to truly thrive. What was the purpose of us extending emergency funds if we can't cover these possible cuts to programs like this? Because we want to continue to make sure that our minorities have a segment to continue to grow here in Connecticut. I, along with a lot of my Black and Puerto Rican Caucus members, urge to keep all references to minority programs intact, the boards intact in many of the sections. These sections are section 16, 21, and 26. I am in favor of allowing the board to create bylaws and enhance their role to really understand their mission. But we would strongly oppose getting rid of any of that language that takes away the word or definition of minority. Thank you.
So thank you, Representative Wilson. And I should just note for our hearing today, this is a department bill. As you noticed, it's pretty voluminous with regard to their statutory changes. It will be clearly vetted, edited, and amended. Need I say more? Okay. Thank you for being with us. Yes, Co-Chair Meskers.
So having worked with you in the past and spoken to you, I guess the right word would be a force of nature. And I'm always impressed by both your carriage and your delivery and your preparedness. So again, it's an agency bill. We're not the authors. We will certainly have conversations to find, if there's a meeting of minds or not and where we go with this. But you resound. Your voice resounds with me. Thank you. Senator Miller. 1 second, Darrell. Senator Miller, I believe, has her hand up. Sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just for clarification, Representative Wilson, did you say SB 7 or SB 307?
SB 307.
And so thank you for your testimony. I really do appreciate it. I stand with you on this. It appears that and within the last year or so, that the individuals feels that African Americans, as well as the Hispanic community, that what we've contributed to this country should be erased. Doesn't count, doesn't matter. And from my opinion, and based on what you had mentioned, right, is that the Black and Puerto Rican Caucus is where inclusion is very important. And we should not be erased. And the state of Connecticut should fight against this, because we have a responsibility to make sure that everyone is treated equally in this state. So I have a question for you, and you may not know the answer. If you don't know, that's fine. Why do you think the proponents of this legislation as it's written now, why do you think that they found it necessary to even put it into law?
So I'm not going to speak necessarily for the agency, but I think what we have seen over the last 6 to 8 months are individuals really trying to figure out how we can continue as a state to make sure that we are not only receiving the federal funds, but in somewhat in compliance. And for me, it's not necessarily about us necessarily being in compliance with the federal government, because there are certain things when you stand on certain principles and you stand for certain visions of providing access, you say no sometimes. And so this is one of those instances where we find a creative way. We have found a creative way by having the emergency fund available to really recoup the possible loss of funds to programs that are so vitally important. And I think it's understanding that we know that when language is stripped out of statutes in this building, it doesn't just go back in overnight. And that this is a process of access. We have had minority construction council members, contractors, and other businesses come before this legislature time and time again and really beg for access. And so these businesses are thriving and want to continue to build. And so I believe some of the names of what we're trying to change them to are not necessarily capturing exactly what we have as a vision. I applaud trying to add possible alliance districts and distressed municipalities, but the reality is that small businesses and minority businesses exist all over the state. And so I don't want us to continue to water down the opportunities for certain groups that have a hard time gaining private equity and gaining the opportunity to truly thrive in this state and provide opportunity. When one of our jobs is to continue to promote that opportunity for generational wealth and growth within a community. So, I think the agency and others are doing their part to try to make sure they have a vision. But sometimes it's not necessarily going with the vision that individuals want you to go with, but standing on a principle and a policy of the work that they have already been doing. And I think keeping that work in lockstep with what they already have on the statutes is best for us to move forward. And we will be here fighting tooth and nail with them to make sure that they have their day to continue to do the work. So thank you.
Thank you, Rep. Wilson, for your very eloquent response. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator. And Representative Kit?
Yeah, just briefly, Representative Wilson, I just want to say thank you for your testimony. And I too am concerned about the number of proposals working to erase the identity of groups in our state that have been historically pushed to the edges or not received equitable treatment by the state. So I just wanted to thank you for your testimony, and I hope we can work on improving this bill so that nobody is erased. That's all I had to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative. Are there further questions? And thank you again, Representative Wilson. I will just make a footnote on this conversation because I think we have other people who will be here regarding SB 307. As I said to you earlier, this is a rather large proposal. There are a lot of provisions in it. I regret that we are hearing this today without it having been initially amended, because it will be amended. So thank you very much. And Senator Martin.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. Senator Wilson, thank you for testifying. I was outside for a little bit here, so I didn't hear everything you had to say, but I'm curious. The ECD has various programs that look to stimulate the state economy, to help move the needle and for the minority throughout all the state of Connecticut. In your opinion, are we moving the needle?
So I will say, I think partially we are moving the needle. I think the concern is as we are under a new federal administration, understanding the pressure that comes with wanting to rename certain things, I think that becomes a concern of the access to certain dollars. And so there's the pressure to conform to a new standard of eliminating words or not focusing on certain groups. And so I think for us, the concern is we have done a very good job of pinpointing programs that target certain groups that have been underserved or had under access to certain resources in this state. So that is our concern, is that changing certain language takes away or semi devalues the work that we have been doing with some of these communities.
Understood, and I think we'll all are very cognizant of what's happening on the federal level and the possible ramifications of what could happen. But we've been at this for decades right now, and it seems to me that we've come up with various programs through the decades, and we're not moving the needle. That's concerning to me. So can you speak to that? Or why are what we currently have in place? We're funding small businesses as best as we can through ideas that have been gone through this legislature, but yet we keep hearing the same tune, so to speak, year or session after session. And some are new ideas, but it seems like we just keep throwing money at the problem, but we're not getting the results. Can you speak to that?
So I will say, when you look at, so I've had the fortune of sitting on the sub bonding committee. When you look at certain programs that we create, just being frank, we're slow. And so when it takes a business 6 to 8 to a year to get through a process to get things that are provided through this legislature, through different funds, when those processes take a while and we've got to figure out different policies and measures, they've got families to feed, they've got bills to pay. And so when this process on our end takes forever to get established, they're already trying to swim in water and barely survive. And so I think it's also looking at the mechanism that we may have good intentions for certain programs, but the opportunity, when we look at the fine details of them, they're not eligible. And so I think it's being the realistic part that some of the things that we have on the table may be well intended, but do not hit the areas that we have. In this bill, for example, the new fund talks about industries that really don't touch every single minority community around biotech and some of the other things. And so it's also us really taking a step back and seeing what types of businesses are small minority business owners opening, and really focusing on, are the funds, are the point of the program, is that vision truly matching the growth within certain communities? I think individuals also walk away. We may create programs, but it's so hard to get the funds. They walk away from it within the construction industry and so on and so forth, because they know they have a hard time getting through the door. Even if they do all of the paperwork right, there's a very small, minuscule chance that they will get an opportunity to even be awarded something. And so I think we look at it from the standpoint of our processes, whether they're through the state or private, just don't work always for a lot of minority businesses to get
It,
opportunity.
it would be helpful if you could provide information or that list of obstacles so that we could probably address it here in the Commerce Committee, maybe some other committees as well. So thank you
Absolutely.
for answering my question. Thank you, Madam.
Thank you, Senator Martin. Are there other hands raised? Seeing none. Again, we're in your debt for being with us this morning, Darrell, and we'll continue to have this conversation. Thank you. I would like to invite Senator Winfield, and I think he is remote.
I am.
And good afternoon to you, Senator.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair. Good afternoon, Madam Chair, Mr. Chair, members of the ranking members and members of the committee. I come to you today to testify on the same bill as Representative Wilson before me with very similar concerns. I'll start off. I'm known to quote James Baldwin. I will quote James Baldwin again. Baldwin says, "I can't believe what you say because I see what you do." A lot of people in the community that I represent hold that as an opinion of government. In 2016, it was a bill 461, Senate Bill 461. It went through the Finance Committee. It hit the floor, and Senator Fonfara said, minority business, he talked about that the reason we were doing this was despite the success of the Small Business Express program, that success had not extended to minority communities. And what we saw in the debate about this was that folks on both sides of the aisle were supportive of the bill, to the point where it was unanimous out of the House and out of the Senate. And even L. Scott France applauded the revolving nature of the fund because it would allow us to continue to do the things we needed to do that we had not been doing. And here we have a bill that not only changes the name, that would be one thing, but changes in essence what we are doing. When you have a requirement that businesses who are under $1 million in revenue, when you're talking about small businesses, you're going to be talking about the majority of those businesses. When you add in alliance districts, distressed municipalities, and then this other term that hasn't really been put forward, but public investment municipalities, which includes municipalities that need help around that need assistance around their required services. You have opened this program up in a way that is significantly different than the way we defined minority business enterprises. I understand that there may be reasons why the current administration in Washington gives folks reason to pause when it comes to some of the things that we've been doing. But this state did this for a reason. We did this for a reason because we had not been getting it right. We said we are going to put aside $5 million a year. And at the end of that 5 years, we will funded this revolving fund so that we can do the things we need to do to advance people who our public policy hadn't always advanced. We haven't actually done what we should do there, but we certainly should not be doing this. And so I encourage this committee. I heard the chair talk about the fact that this bill is in the state that it's in, and it comes from the Department of Economic and Community Development. But it is important that we show up and make sure that our voices are heard. We explain why we have the opinions that we have. And I think this is a place where voices need to be heard and people need to be on the record. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Senator Winfield, for being with us, and also for your unrelentless work on so many levels, not the least of which is the subject matter we're talking about before us today. And so I think, actually, Senator, this is a kind of a continuation of a conversation that began just last week when we were going into special session. And so there we had a proposal before us doing the same kinds of things. This is the continuation of doing this. And at that time, we recognized the severe shortcomings and the need for a total reset, which we will be doing here in this committee. Our goal is to support small and minority businesses and communities, and we will not step aside from that. So, as I said, as we began this, this will be vetted, edited, and reproposed. But thank you for being with us. I always appreciate your input. Comments from colleagues and other members on the committee, and seeing. And Senator Miller.
Thank you.
Or Madam.
Good afternoon,
you.
Senator
Yes.
Winfield. Thank you, Madam Chair. Good afternoon, Senator Winfield.
Afternoon.
Senator Winfield, you said that the bill was originally enacted in 2016.
Yes, that's correct. It was Senate Bill 461.
So do you
And
know?
I'm sorry, it was
I'm sorry, go
also,
ahead.
just so you know, it's Senate Bill 461 and Public Act 16128
Okay. And do you know it was $5 million per year? Is that what was in
for
the
5
bill?
years, yes.
For 5 years. And so do you know if the monies were dispersed? The $5 million was dispersed each year as
I-
outlined in law?
I believe we
Prescribed
have,
in law?
I believe we have not done everything we were supposed to under the bill as it relates to the disbursement of that money.
So with that being said, and piggyback on Senator Martin's question, do you think that would hinder the startup or businesses being able to use those funds?
I believe if
That's
my
designed.
recollection, sorry, I didn't mean to step on you.
No, that's
I
okay.
believe if my recollection is correct, then had we done what we were supposed to do, this would not even be a question. Had we done what we were supposed to do, the revolving fund would be fully funded, and there would be no need for the state to really talk about its role in getting to fully funding the fund, right? And so I think there's a way in which you have to understand the importance of implementation. We are very much involved in policy that creates a thing, whether it be a program or a statute, but oftentimes where there's a lack for various reasons. I'm not pointing to anyone currently at DCD or at anywhere actually, but for various reasons, we do not do great at implementation, and over time things change, right? And so when the law called for us over the course of 5 years to fund it $5 million, that's what we should have done. We would have a revolving fund, and the state would have less of an issue right now, I believe.
Madam Chair, may I ask another question?
Yes, by all means.
Thank you.
Have the floor.
So, Senator Winfield, as a representative, I know you were very instrumental in making sure that we do a disparity study. It took us a few years and it was finally done. Can you talk about why that was so important that we do that study?
The disparity study was the legal foundation upon which many of our programs were built, right? We know that there are folks who don't see the world the same way as you or I, and think that these programs are programs that should not exist. And so the legal basis for them is the information that comes out of the disparity study. Our disparity study was very old and out of date. And so, as you suggested at one point, I was heavily involved in a disparity study in making that happen, and the Black and Puerto Rican Caucus and other friends and allies to try to make sure that the state was not just trying to get money out the door, but had a legal foundational basis for doing that. And unfortunately, it took many years, but fortunately, we finally got there.
And so, do you know much about the current study? Because I'm told that it's effective the July of this year, the information.
I wouldn't bet my life on this, but I do believe that to be correct.
So with that being said, and the disparity study, and then to change, just in your opinion, to make a change now before the disparity study is even effective, how do you think that would do you think it would exacerbate the situation if we made that change now?
I think a couple of things. I think one, remember that when 461, Senate Bill 461 came into play, part of a huge reason why we did that was we had programs for small businesses. We had programs apply universally and were supposed to help everyone. They didn't. The outreach component was just not something that DECD handled well to minority communities. Focusing specifically on those communities is important to deal with that issue. I think taking that away, which is from my perspective, as I've laid out, when you break down the component parts of this, what we would be doing, basically means a return to form that was not good form. I think also, when you suggest to the people of the state you're doing something, you should do it on DCD's website. It says that the Minority Business Revolving Loan Fund is just one of the ways Connecticut encourages the growth of minority-owned businesses. But we are here, and I recognize that the head of DECD will probably testify later and explain why, but we are here doing something that goes against that sense. I started off this talking about a quote from James Baldwin. There is a reason why people in these communities believe what they believe. And I think we have a responsibility to make sure that as much as possible, that which is kind of cynical, right? It is a cynical perspective, is not true. Yes, I think it would do much harm. Now, we'll just also say this, and maybe I shouldn't venture this. If you accept that you should be doing this, where do you stop? Right? The question in my mind is, if you accept that we should do this because the administration thinks that there's a way that funds should be dealt with that has not been the way that we've been operating, has not been the way that we thought of doing things when we thought of being our better versions of ourselves. Is this the end? No, it's the beginning. And so what does it think? I would encourage folks who might think, well, we could do this, to think about what the end is. And at some point, the end touches you, even if it doesn't touch you today.
Senator Winfield, thank you very much for your very thorough and insightful answers. Thank you, Madam Chair.
And thank you, senators, and thank you, Senator Winfield, for your testimony. Further questions, comments from committee members? Seeing none. Thank you again, Senator Winfield, and we'd like to invite Representative Felipe. And welcome to you, sir.
Good afternoon, Senator Hartley, Representative Meskers, Senator Martin, Representative Skovich, and other members of the Commerce Committee. I don't want to sound like a broken record here, and I take your comments very seriously that this is an agency bill, and I know I'm looking at you guys, but this is my opportunity to speak to the folks to my right that are in the room, and just continue on what we've been talking about and saying that words matter and representation matters. And Senate Bill 307 as drafted does not acknowledge those facts. In fact, I think just by the language change, the slight language change, it actively seeks to wipe away decades of work done to address hundreds of years of inequities in order to conform to mandates from those who do not see us clearly. It's a dangerous backslide. And for years, including just last year, we have worked hard in this legislature to acknowledge the impact of race relations in the state. Racial impact studies, the disparity study we just talked about, and even the basic eye test will tell you that there are barriers to people entering business in this state due to the color of your skin, the thickness of your accent, or even how many X chromosomes you might have. And language that fully acknowledges that reality is important to preserve the protection and opportunity for those affected. I say that full-throatedly. I do not say that in a whisper. And by us eliminating this language, that is us saying that in a whisper, that is us pretending like that's what we feel, but we're not standing up and proud enough to say that out loud. And I think that is an important distinction. I think about our minority contractors. Last year, the Black and Puerto Rican Caucus fought hard on their behalf, made progress to provide them equity in the moment. But that says nothing of the fact that larger companies come from wealth that was being allocated and, cultivated when Black Americans were not full Americans. Jim Crow and before. You talk about the plight of the civil rights movement. You talk about when translation services were not seen as necessary, when people were ostracized because they couldn't speak a language and called unskilled workers, even though they had plenty of talent, just couldn't speak the English language. And now still that minority contractor is expected to put up hundreds of thousands of dollars in a bond against some of these companies that were built under those circumstances, built for, decades, if not centuries, on the backs of people of color, with the hands of people of color. It's more than fair to expect that our state incentivizes and allows for them to build wealth of their own. And I don't even think we do that quite yet, but with what we do currently, we're getting there to an extent. I mean, we're playing defense at this point, and I'm pleading with you not to go in the other direction. On opening day, in a moment I was proud to cheer for, the governor stood up for what he saw our values were and things that this state could not abide by from our federal government. This is another one of those things that I do not think our state can abide by. It's basic erasure. The proposition, there's no proposition of like terms or an alternative path for these. It's just the erasure of the terms. And Senator Hartley, you spoke about it earlier. This stems from a conversation that started before the special session, and the change was done, attempted to be done very quickly, and without input from any member of the Black and Puerto Rican Caucus. We are 40 members strong. We hold a lot of leadership positions that will impact whether or not legislation passes or fails here in this legislature. And I think it's important for us to be a part of conversations about our communities before they come to us on the floor. Additionally, I just want to also point out the inclusion of language with tightening the process around subgrantees. I think it's important to look at this problem. I'm not saying that it isn't a problem. I'm not saying that we do not have to be good stewards of our public dollars. But the way that it is written now and the way that it is attempted to be done will put small dollar nonprofits, folks with maybe small staff or not enough bandwidth, in a position where they aren't able to access state dollars, where they're not able to access help for their communities. And maybe they are the ones closest to the solution because they are down in those communities doing it on a community nonprofit level. I'm not saying that we don't tighten the process. I think we definitely need to tighten the process. But doing it this way, as it stands, puts us in a position where our small nonprofits that have not been around for a very long time or don't have bandwidth, don't have that accumulated wealth, will be in a disposition when this is all said and done. I don't want to take up too much of your time. I thank you for the opportunity to testify, and I look forward to any questions.
Thank you so much, Representative Felipe. And I know that you speak for your district and also for the BPRC, and I appreciate your presence here today. I guess if I could try to find a silver lining in this whole sequence that began before special session, it would be that we are talking about this boldly and candidly, and we will deal with it that way. And there has been much done to try to get to where we are and beyond, and the frustration of not being beyond is real. And I appreciate it with you. I'm a representative from one of the five largest cities in the state, and with the demographics of many of those whom you speak of today. So please know that we are working together in unison with this and with the administration to find the silver lining, to correct, to make it better, and to make it more effective. So I guess I'm just trying to find that bright side in this conversation. And I'm glad we're having this. Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you very
Senator,
much.
and Waterbury is lucky to have you.
Thank you. And yes, my colleague, Representative Meskers.
So one, I want to thank you for your passionate delivery. I think it's an important issue we take focus on. And acknowledging that we weren't the authors, I think I appreciate that. I think if you know me and know our committee, our advocacy has been particularly on lifting up our cities and our distressed communities, whether it be our relentless advocacy for brownfield remediation and funding for brownfields, whether in the prior session our advocacy for apprenticeships, so we could broaden and look at the number of our minority students at VTech and VOTech that would qualify to become apprentices to get into the entire trade industry. So everything we can do to improve opportunity is part of our mantra, I think, universally. So this one has caught me somewhat surprised because obviously I wasn't the author. So we will definitely have a commitment. We will be working with you on this.
Yeah, Representative, I thank you for that. And I also want to acknowledge that you do good work. That brownfields money is something that does a lot of great work in Bridgeport. And I will say on behalf of myself, when it comes to DECD, I do not think that they, as authors of this bill, had malicious intent. However, it was an egregious mistake, and I think we just need to point it out as such. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Th- Thank you. And Senator Miller?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and good afternoon, Mr. Chair. I want to thank you for testifying today and highlighting the points that you made. You made one very good, very important point that I would like you to expound upon if you can. You talked about the nonprofits not having the bandwidth to function the way the bill is written. Can you expound on that, please?
Absolutely, Senator. I think it's no secret that there have been conversations in this building and in this state about how the subcontracting has worked for some of our nonprofits, specifically when it comes to some of our nonprofits in the communities that you and I represent. But what is not seen is what I said earlier about these businesses that have cultivated wealth over this time. The same goes for our nonprofit sector. A lot of times in places like Bridgeport, you'll see folks that are from neighboring towns like Fairfield, Trumbull, usually of a lighter hue, that run these organizations as executive director, get it run through foundations that have been open for years, but they don't get to the heart of the issues within the communities which they serve. Right? I represent my community. I've lived in my district my entire life. And with that, there are things that you see sometimes on the street or just out your window that folks won't know if they go home at 5 o'clock. So those smaller nonprofits who have that knowledge, who are in the community speaking to folks on a consistent basis, but might not have the bandwidth in order to secure more funding, so to have a grant writer, to hire a grant writer, to hire somebody to do the grant writing while they're here sitting in these rooms advocating for us. That's a barrier that I think we need to make sure that we are accounting for. And I just want to really quickly to a question that Senator Martin had a little bit earlier, talking about kind of the barriers that are here. I think it's important also to look at as much money as we put into these programs. Usually when we cut money, the money that we cut is in training and is in teaching people how to respond to these grants, how to get back to other folks and make sure that there's the opportunity for them to relay the information. DCD requires a lot and they should require a lot, but we should be teaching folks how to answer these applications, not just put them out into the world and expect people to know what exactly it is we're looking for. Thank you, Senator Miller, for your question.
Thank you. And I wanted to agree with you, concur with you that I don't think that DCD was being malicious when this piece of legislation was submitted to us. But I think that DCD, and not only DCD, but all state agencies should really bring the individuals that their change is going to impact to the table. When I say the individuals, they're advocates. And I'm disappointed that the Black and Puerto Rican Caucus wasn't involved in this conversation in drafting this piece of legislation, because I don't think we'll be sitting here today in opposition of it. So again, I want to thank you and the Vice Chair, Representative Wilson, for testifying on behalf of the Black and Puerto Rican Caucus. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Senator. Further comments, Senator Martin?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Representative Felipe. Regarding the nonprofits and my comments regarding, I guess, towards what's working, not working, et cetera, I think it's important for us as a body, as legislators, to truly maybe get down into the weeds and find out what programs are working.
Yes, sir.
And one that are not. You mentioned something about training, which absolutely there may be some training that's will always be required, regardless if we're training them to apply for a grant or for work, et cetera. But regarding nonprofits, and I hear it a lot here in this building, and it's so frustrating because part of our job here as legislators is to the economic development of the entire state, nonprofits as well as the private sector, right? And I don't think we have been doing our job, because if we're putting scales here and looking at the monies that we've been either granting, loaning, whatever programs, is you might see that the nonprofits are tipping the scales. It's a little frustrating at my end, because I come from the private sector, And it baffles me to see and to hear nonprofit. I remember being in the shoes, being a small contractor and applying for my first bond and qualifying in order for me to be part of the bigger pond, so to speak, right, in jobs. And the work and I had to do to fill out the forms or whatever it may be, and financially to have the capability to support that bond, right? That's all part of it. I really would like everybody's help, including the minority caucus. I don't think the agency was doing anything malicious here, right? I think they were trying to, hey, how can we stimulate the economy here in the state of Connecticut? What are some of the obstacles that are taking place? They have identified perhaps something here that, gee, this is holding us back. If we remove this language, perhaps we would get more applicants for the small express, soon to be the small boost program. But nonetheless, so I don't think anything malicious, but I really would like to dig down deep to find out what programs are working, what is not, get rid of the programs that are not working, and then move the ball forward so that we can have a very an economy that we'd all be proud of. So thank you for your comments today. And I think this board, we've done the way that we work together here, our focus is primarily to economic growth in the state of Connecticut. There are no colors, there are no nationalities involved in all this. It is simply black and white. So, okay.
Yeah, if I can quickly respond, Senator, or Madam Chair, thank you for that. I would be happy as a caucus and as an individual to talk about some of those things with you. I do want to clarify that when I was speaking about the nonprofits, I was speaking strictly on the pass-through language that is in this bill. I spoke earlier about the minority contractors and disparity study we did. Some of those are also private ownership. We would like them to get their fair share as well. And I know you didn't mean it maliciously, but we are the Black and Puerto Rican caucus. As far as I know, the Republicans are the minority caucus here in the state of Connecticut.
So noted.
Thank you, Representative Martin, and thanks, Representative Felipe. And I just want to highlight, first of all, your testimony, but the fact that, yes, it is about recognizing our stewardship of our taxpayer dollars, and it is about scaling them and maximizing them and getting them to our target areas. And I think what brings us here today, quite frankly, is a misstep and moving too fast. I have always experienced working with the administration in terms of them being totally and completely in support of businesses, minority businesses, urban areas. However, can we always be better? Absolutely. And so once again, I go back to my thought about the silver lining. Let's find the silver lining in this. Let's be better and be more accountable, but maximize every cent that we have to our goals, which is to support minority businesses. So thanks very much for being with us.
Thank you, Senator.
Appreciate it. I'd like to now invite Representative Hoxa, who's been patiently waiting. Good afternoon to you, sir.
Good afternoon, Chairs Hartley and Representative Meskers, Ranking Member Senator Martin and Rep. Anaskovich. My name is Joe Hoxa, representing the 78th District. I have come before you today to testify in favor of House Bill 5320, an act concerning a study of the establishment of a Connecticut Bridge Authority. This is a concept that I put in order to study the feasibility of maybe one day, hopefully not too long from now, to have a bridge connecting Connecticut with Long Island. Now, this comes before you today in the Commerce Committee because one of the main functions of said bridge would be to expedite commerce between the island, Long Island, and the entire state of Connecticut. And that could come in many forms. That could come in the form of tourists from Long Island cutting their travel time virtually in half, if not more, depending on where they want to go in Connecticut. to not just come to Connecticut, but other states in New England, and but would have to go through Connecticut. Hence, they would have to make frequent stops to get food, visit restaurant, go to restaurants, get food, get gas, visit tourist sites in Connecticut, regardless of where their final destination may be in New England. This bill is, a first step to sort of just establishing a mechanism by which we can assess whether it would be worth to engage in some sort of partnership with New York and the federal government to make this a reality one day. And I think I vehemently support it for the reasons that I just stated, but it also is very much so in the vein of the real essence of this country, which is that we are a country of innovators, a country of builders, and a project like this, as you're going to see with other speakers that are going to come after me, is that this idea is a bipartisan idea. Building things, big infrastructure projects are one of the few cases where Republicans and Democrats can sometimes agree. The net benefit of this would so much outweigh the cost in a relatively short period of time. I've been presented studies where this would pay for itself in 10 years just from the toll revenue, and that's splitting it between Connecticut and New York. This project would require, obviously, a partnership with the federal government and the state of New York. But I believe that this is, a really good starting point to start it on the Connecticut side, and whether that bridge is in Bridgeport, the hometown of the representative that spoke before me, Representative Felipe, or whether it's in another area along the coast. I think wherever it is along our coast, it benefits the whole state, including my district, which is about 60 miles north from the coast in Bristol, because the economic output that would be generated would not just be concentrated to one particular area. It would create a trickle effect all over Connecticut and even New England. So with that said, that's all I have to say for this bill. I would be happy to entertain any questions. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you. And I think this is the first time publicly we've kind of entertained this concept. I'm curious, do you have it 10 years? How much is it going to cost? Do you have any kind of numbers?
Yes. So I've heard that estimates anywhere between 50 to 60 billion. And obviously that is not going to come from just Connecticut's, pockets. And honestly, it wouldn't even come in the form of traditional funding. It would probably be bonding would probably be the main tool to be used here. But the bulk of the funding would really come from the federal government, and Connecticut would play its part. The state of New York would play its part. I think each stakeholder here, each party involved would contribute their fair share of the project.
How many miles, just roughly?
I believe it's 25.
Wow. 25-mile bridge. Okay, thanks so much. Appreciate your being here and your testimony, comments, and seeing. Oh, yes, Representative Mesker.
So I definitely will agree with you in the commentary that both Republicans and Democrats have a consensus that we need to move the state forward. We both agree we need to build things. And I'm certainly will be interested in looking closely as where we go with the ideas of both, I guess, the questions that we can't answer today, which is the cost and the percentage borne by the two states and the federal government, the revenue generation, and ultimately the nature of the tolls and what that does in terms of traffic. Not in terms of worsening traffic, but taking traffic off the roads or shortening the distance between those commuting areas. My question on tourism, my question on commerce will be that versus, in my own humble view, looking at electrification of Waterbury and Danbury into New York, looking at rails to Bradley for transport, for commerce throughout the state, making our airports railroad and both freight and passenger accessible. So there's a lot of different places. So this may give rise to, if we have a willingness to spend, where do we want to spend it and how do we want to spend it? So it's not a bad idea to have the exercise. So I appreciate the thoughts there.
Thank you, Representative Meskers, to be followed by Representative Kidd.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair. Along the lines of what Representative Meskers was talking about, I think it would be an interesting exercise for the state to look at more ferry ports along both the Connecticut and Long Island coasts, because we do want to reduce the number of car trips from an environmental standpoint. So ferries that have a capacity to carry cars as well as tourists. I think that could be an excellent way to reduce our traffic along 95. And increase commerce between Connecticut and Long Island and possibly New York City if we had ferries that ran into New York City from various places along our coast. I'm just hesitant to increase our traffic around Fairfield County, but as well as pollution from the added cars. So just a thought, we do have this wonderful resource in the Sound, and someone who loves taking that ferry over to Long Island. I think it could be an interesting way to further this idea. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. And Representative Hoska, you would like to respond, I see.
Thank you, Senator Hartley. Yes, no, that's an absolutely valid point. From my studies and my research on this, it would actually reduce overall pollution, because if you think about it, the route to get from, let's say where I live in Bristol, Connecticut, to Queens, New York, right? I would have to take Route 8, then 95, or potentially 84, 684 to get into New York. And then I'd have to drive all the way to New York City and find a bridge there to connect me to Long Island, where, Queens is, if I needed to go to JFK or LaGuardia. For the majority of the state, it would be a much quicker route to just go the 25 miles, plus wherever you live in the state, straight to Long Island. So for anybody that's going to Long Island to go to the airport, let's say, this might actually be a quicker drive, and overall it might actually, alleviate some of the pollution generated by the pollution generated today by the routes that people take today to get from Connecticut to certain parts of Long Island. And but look, this is not something that in the spirit of what I truly hope to accomplish with this bill, which right now is just a study. We're not, putting shovels into the ground just yet. So, but in the spirit of what I'm trying to accomplish with this bill, it doesn't need to be an either or. It doesn't need to be, oh, we are building a bridge, therefore every other form of transportation is null and void. Definitely open to the concept of more ferries for recreational purposes or otherwise. But, this is the creation of this bridge, really checks multiple boxes: recreation, commerce, and it's a major, major infrastructure project that could generate thousands of jobs and impact and create economic output for, downstream, like Representative Meskers was alluding to, that creates, maybe cottage industries or beefs up current commerce and industries in other parts of the state where we didn't even imagine that the bridge would have an impact on. So it doesn't need to be an either or, and I'm definitely open to any and all, suggestions.
Thank
I
you.
appreciate that. I love the yes and aspect. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Kidd. Thank you, Representative Hoxa. Big conversation. Thank you, sir. And I'd like to invite now Commissioner of DECD, Dan O'Keefe.
Thank you, Senator Hartley, Representative Meskers, Senator Martin, Representative and Sefcovic. I'm Dan O'Keefe, Commissioner of the DEC. I'm happy to take questions on any of the elements of our bill, but I've sat through the testimony so far, and clearly the changes we have proposed to the minority revolving loan fund has triggered some understandable sensitivities. I appreciate sincerely those of you, including Senator Martin, who said you do not believe that was done with malintent. I can assure you it was the opposite. But Representative Felipe, who's someone I deeply respect, he referred to it as an egregious mistake. I want to agree with him in this sense. The egregious mistake was trying to do this quietly. So I'm now going to do it loudly. Over the summer, I got a call from the Attorney General's office, who after a review of all of our programs, told me that this one program was no longer in compliance with federal law. I took that very personally. Because I am someone who believes inequity is structural. I am someone who took this role partly because I would like to leverage whatever influence, quote unquote, power I have to be intentional in addressing that inequity. And my first reaction was, I don't care. These are state dollars. I don't understand why federal law even applies. And then it became personal for a second reason, because I was told I'm personally liable, not the state of Connecticut, not the commissioner of the DECD, Dan O'Keefe, because I have to sign off personally on our compliance with federal law. And by the way, that is, I was told, to treble damages, meaning personal liability of $30 million. I took this job because I care about public service. I want to show my daughters that service is the highest calling. But unless someone wants to call my wife and tell her that we are on the hook for $30 million, I said, okay, what's plan B? Now, we have other programs, by the way, including Boost, for example, where that is in compliance with federal law because it is a goal, not a requirement. That goal is to be greater than 50% minority and women-owned businesses. We're well north of that. We're well north of 60%. What we are suggesting is, rather than make it a requirement, restricting it to any community, we simply say it'll be a goal. And my understanding is with that, it is now in compliance with federal law. The only other option I see is indemnifying me personally, which, we can have that conversation, you can have that conversation. But in the absence of that, my hands are truly tied. The last comment I'll make here is Senator Winfield, who, again, someone I like and respect and who I've discussed this with. I hope he's still on, by the way, said, what comes next? How far can this go? And I would say to him, actually, it never ends. They move, we move. This federal administration has understood now how to leverage federal power to affect an outcome. If we in the state of Connecticut do not agree with that outcome, we should leverage every power we have to counteract it. And I think that work never ends. So I want to be very vocal about why that change was introduced. I want to lament the fact that it was not done with more broader communication. That's exactly what was happening. But now you all are very aware of what is happening. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions on that topic or others.
Thank you very much, Commissioner, for being with us and also for your candid remarks, and also your previous candid remarks as we were attempting to go into a special session a week or so ago. It's important, I think, to frame where we are today in the facts and the circumstances that brought us here. And as I said earlier, I think that it's important that we, and to your point, let's talk about it openly and candidly and directly, and let's deal with it. Yeah, we are in the crosshairs here from the feds. There's no question about it. And we've seen how it's played out, quite frankly, in some other states where they have followed through. So we want to continue to meet our goals and better. And we're finding ourselves in this whole new world. So yeah, I lament, how this has come forward, but not that we are here, because I think it ought to be directly and openly discussed. And I really look forward to going through word for word to have a piece of legislation which accomplishes that. So, we're going to roll up our sleeves, and quite frankly, we're going to try to, get value out of where we are right now. Thank you. Thank you very much, Commissioner. Yes, and Senator Miller. Senator Miller? Oh,
I'm having a conversation with myself again.
Those are the best conversations I have.
No,
but I said, thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for your comments, and good afternoon, Commissioner. I really do appreciate the comments that you made, and I appreciate the phone call that you made to me. And what I would like to see come out of this is a way of protecting you and maintaining the original intent. I should say the intent of the original bill. I don't want to water the intentions down because look, being a woman of color, being a Black woman, I've experienced the inequities. And what I always say is that we wouldn't need laws if individuals did the right thing. We wouldn't need laws of injustice to make sure that individuals are treated fairly if individuals did the right thing. And so unfortunately, we have to put things into law. And that was the purpose of the original bill. And so I understand the problem that you have with trying to make sure that you don't have to tell your wife that we're on the hooks for $30 million. But I also would like you to understand the position of the Black and Puerto Rican caucus, or members, especially me, I should say my position as a member of the caucus, that I really I want to make sure that Black and Hispanics and the other groups that are outlined in the original bill, I should say law, that they are protected and that they have access, because I've been in the General Assembly since 2009, and I've heard minority contractors say over and over again how they didn't have access. And this bill, the original language, that's what we're trying to do. So thank you for that. And I hope that we can work together to try to change things so that it doesn't go that far, but everyone is protected.
Yeah, Senator, I hope you don't mind my sharing something you said to me, which was erasing these words felt like erasing your identity. And that broke my heart because, my view here is this is about the work and the work continuing. And, I perhaps was, I don't think I recognized that by trying to introduce some flexibility in a way that would allow the work to continue, that it would in any way come across or be communicated as erasing anyone's identity. That certainly was not the intent. The intent is to make sure the work itself continues. That's what's most important, I think, ultimately. But I will just echo what you said. We are ready to work with you very closely to make sure the work itself does continue.
All right, thank you very much. And when I say me, the Black and Puerto Rican caucus as well. But I had a question, Commissioner, if you wouldn't mind, Madam Chair, on section 23.
Yeah, proceed.
So Commissioner, in section 23, it deals with the concentrated poverty legislation, and namely the Office of Community Economic and Development Assistance. And I see that you made some changes, and I have a couple questions. So first of all, why the language change? Why the need for the language change?
Yeah, so it turns out having multiple offices creates some managerial inflexibility. Within the DCD, I think Kyle's on, keep me honest here. I believe we have 17 offices of Office of Small Business, Office of Manufacturing, Office of. I was part of the problem. I created the Office of Innovation. When we had a pretty dramatic imbalance of workload within the DECD, I spent over a year trying to rebalance resources such that I could move some folks from a place where we had less work to places where we had a significant amount of work. And it turns out changing people through offices creates challenges, what I'll call managerial inflexibility. So what I said was fine, no more offices. We're going to focus on the work that we need to work on, but we're going to have broad buckets: community development and economic development, led by two deputy commissioners, Matt Puglisi in community development. And just yesterday, we announced Kirti Patel has become our deputy commissioner focused on economic development. So it's not unique to concentrated poverty. We are seeking and asking to maximize organizational flexibility by removing the concept of office of.
Okay. And so what about the date changes?
The what changes, sorry?
The date changes, there are changes to dates. So,
So I believe it was a resources issue where we didn't have we weren't allocated resources to get it up and going as quickly as the legislation originally anticipated. So we've moved the dates out, given that.
So do you have the resources now?
We do not.
So you're operating a department or a program where you weren't giving resources?
This happens, frankly, quite a bit.
Mhm.
where we're mandated programs, quote unquote, within available resources.
Right.
That's a challenge for us, particularly what's going on in the community development capital project side of the house. Available resources is a bit of a misnomer.
Right. So, and I sit on the finance committee, and I thought the original language originated from out of that committee.
I believe it did.
And so, and I know that is Senator Fonfara's bill. Have you discussed the changes with him?
We have, Senator Fonfara and I connected yesterday. I have not had we've been playing phone tag. I have not yet had a chance to connect with him to explain the Office of Change. He had
Mhm.
not read the bill. He had just heard it was being discussed here today. I do believe, though, it will still go back through that committee. So he will have an opportunity to weigh in on it publicly.
Right. Thank you. Thank you for your answers. And Madam Chair, I would request that the department that Senator Fonfara be brought into this conversation, since he was the original proponent of the language and he knows what the legislative intent is. So I would make that request, please.
And I'll just say here, I'll honor that request, as I've said to Senator Fonfara as well. It's
Yes.
important to all of us that he be part of this discussion.
Thank you. I have also heard from Senator Fonfara about this, recognizing that this was the work that he proposed through the Finance Committee. So there's a lot of connecting BPRC, Senator Fonfara, and revision that will go forward with this. Further comments? Seeing none. Thank you very much, Commissioner.
Thank you.
Appreciate you being here. Thank you. And so next, we'd like to invite Paul Armone to CBIA.
Good afternoon, members of the Commerce Committee. My name is Paul Amarone. I'm a Senior Policy Director at the Connecticut Business and Industry Association. I'm testifying today in support of House Bill 5319, an act concerning a research and development tax credit for small businesses. HB 5319 establishes a program allowing qualified small businesses to claim a tax credit equal to 6% of research and development expenses. To be clear, modern manufacturing is driven by research and development. Whether producing aerospace components, advanced materials, medical devices, or biotechnology products, today's manufacturers must continually refine processes, develop new products, and invest in cutting-edge technologies to remain competitive. Many Connecticut manufacturers operate as S corporations or partnerships and would qualify under the bill's definition of a qualified small business. These businesses are large enough to compete globally, but small enough that R&D investments carry significant financial risk. Unlike large corporations, smaller businesses often fund research internally, balance tight margins, and absorb the cost of projects that may not ultimately reach commercialization. To understand the practical impact of the passage of this bill, consider a Connecticut-based advanced manufacturing company producing precision components for the aerospace sector. To secure a new contract, the company invests $2 million in R&D development in a single year. These expenses include prototype tooling, material testing, stress analysis, and development of initial product runs. If this bill were to be passed into law, that $2 million in qualified state R&D spending would generate a $120,000 credit at the 6% rate. This credit can fund an additional engineer, allow the purchase of next generation machining equipment, or accelerate the transition from prototype to full-scale production. In many cases, it can make the difference between expanding operations here in Connecticut or evaluating opportunities in other states in the region. For small businesses, the location of research activity often determines where production ultimately scales. When engineering, prototyping, and manufacturing occur, commercialization is more fluid and supply chains remain local. This bill is a smart, targeted policy that rewards in-state innovation, supports small businesses, and promotes sustainable economic development. It balances growth with fiscal responsibility while providing businesses with the certainty they need to invest confidently in Connecticut. We respectfully ask the committee to support HB 5319, and I would be happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much for your testimony and also for you and the CBIA's advocacy, longtime advocacy for this particular concept, which this committee has also worked and proposed also for a number of sessions. And we, again, are here to say that this is very important. This is exactly the population, the universe that most is in need of this benefit, as opposed to the top tier individuals who now have the ability for these kinds of tax credits. So we will continue to have this conversation and push this concept forward. I appreciate you once again being here and advocating for this. And there are comments from my colleagues. Seeing none, thank you very much. Look forward to continuing to work on this.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. And with that, I'd like to invite Jenna Grasso. She's also a CBIA representative. Is Jenna with us? Oh, you are? Oh, okay.
Chairs, vice chairs, ranking members, and members of the committee. I am Jenna Grasso, Policy Director of Bioscience Growth and State Spending at the Connecticut Business and Industry Association. I am also CBIA's Bioscience Growth Director. I'm representing biotech and biopharma companies, both small and large, and small primarily is what is bringing me here today. Thank you for the opportunity to testify in support of this bill and act concerning a research and development tax credit for small businesses. And thank you for your continued support of this R&D effort over many sessions. Connecticut is a biotechnology hub, and the life sciences sector contributes a whopping $7.1 billion in revenue to Connecticut. There's 23,000 jobs and over 1,600 businesses directly within the biotechnology sector. 40% of these jobs are directly within R&D. And New Haven has now 130 biotech businesses just in their city, with 29 biotech R&D job growth since 2019. Despite this growth and amazing capability, companies driving in the early stage in their early stages cannot access the existing R&D structure. As my colleague just mentioned, they are, able to compete nationally, but don't qualify for the current tax structure to receive this R&D credit. They are currently structured as S corporations and commonly LLCs, and their operating budgets are entirely R&D. Because they do not have this liability, again, they cannot qualify as the law currently exists. However, this bill makes a vital step in allowing qualified biotech businesses to apply for the credit. And translates into meaningful millions of dollars that can be directly reinvested into further research, hiring new talent, and further exploration within the sector. Expanding this credit with 4 S Corp biotech firms will strengthen the sector undoubtedly and attract new innovation to the state, which is critically important as we are centered right between New York and Boston. With Harvard, we need to compete on that stage. It positions Connecticut to grow its bioscience ecosystem and remain competitive in a field where early stage companies face significant choices, but where they can relocate and expand. So once again, this is another bill that is about economic competitiveness and setting us apart on the national stage. So thank you again for the opportunity to testify today, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you so much for being with us, Jenna. So you the new Paul Piscatello?
I am.
Okay.
Don't we look alike?
Yes, yes. Well, welcome. And it's pleased to have you testifying on this today. It is about early stage. It's about that universe that we just talked about, that really this would be such a direct accelerator for. I will also note that at one of our next public hearings, we're going to be looking at the angel tax credit, which is another tool that the bio community has been looking to have some updating and reworking on. So stay tuned for that. Are there questions from colleagues? Seeing none, thanks,
Thank you.
Jenna. Okay,
Thank
and
you, Senator.
travel safe. I'm just looking at the weather here. It's kind of, whoever believed that groundhog, right? Said he wasn't right on cue. Okay, next we have, is it online? Jenny Kowalski? Oh, Steve before. Okay, Steve with us? Yes, thank you, Steve.
Good afternoon, Chairman, Vice Chairman, and members of committee. I'm Stephen Shapiro with Gold Coast Properties. I have former Trumbull First Selectman Tim Herbst here with me. Former Mayor Bill Finch of Bridgeport was here, but he had to bop to another committee. He might be back. Just to clarify, Representative Huxaw mentioned 25 miles. That's the sound at its widest point. I'm here to speak on the bridge study. Bridgeport straight across to the Sunken Meadows State Parkway in Long Island's about 14 miles, just for accuracy on the length there. So obviously this bridge idea has been something that's been debated by both states for 90 years. A lot of people, here's former Mayor French. You know, a lot of it's too expensive. People, you know, laugh at it to some degree because it's just such a over the top idea. And some people say, you know, 200 years ago when Governor Clinton in New York proposed the Erie Canal, people laughed at him. It turned New York into the most important city in the world. 90 years ago when Governor Dewey proposed the Tappan Zee Bridge, people laughed at him. Now it's traveled all the time and connects Westchester and to Rockland County and over to New Jersey. Now, we're obviously here for just a study, but I think it's very worthwhile to investigate the economic benefit it could have to our state. The costs, and as Rep. Huxaw stated, it would be Connecticut, New York, the federal government. It could be private investors too. There was a gentleman from Long Island before the crash in 2008 that was going to fund the whole thing, a tunnel from right to Oyster Bay. I know there's been multiple locations proposed over the years for this. I think Bridgeport is such an asset to our state. It's the largest city in our state. It's a deep water port. It's close enough to New York City where it's accessible. And it could really be a huge economic engine to our state. And connecting those 3 million people from Long Island, where Bridgeport's your first stop, they don't have a major city on Long Island. They have to travel to New York City if they want a city experience. If this bridge spurs growth and puts attractions, we have a great job base in Stamford, and Stamford's very well developed, but there's not entertainment attractions per se. People take the ferry now to go to the amphitheater in Bridgeport. If this could be a driver of growth for Bridgeport, it could really turn into a regional power. It's perfectly strategically located. It's actually the geographical midpoint between Boston and Philadelphia. So we're really just looking for a study here to explore it, see what the costs are. I have talked to the Federal Highway Administration in Washington. They were open to the conversation. New York, I think, would be very open to this. They've funded most of the study and research on this as recently as Governor Cuomo did one in 2017, exploring various locations, including this specific one. So I think there's so much potential in Bridgeport. I've lived in the area my whole life. I was born in Bridgeport in 1986, grew up in Fairfield, live in Easton now. And I think this could be such a great thing for our state. It's worth at least exploring with a study, gathering that data, and then going from there. So I'm open to any questions. So is former First Selectman Herbst or Mayor Finch that the committee may have.
Well, thank you. Thanks for being with us, and welcome to our former colleagues, familiar faces here. We really appreciate you being here, and it's an interesting concept, but it's a big conversation. And so I'm pleased to hear that it doesn't have to be 25-mile long bridge, and that and your analogies about, previous Tappan Zee and canals and that kind of thing resonate. So we shouldn't be closed-minded or daunted by the fact that, we're talking about astronomical numbers. I appreciate you being here, and I will ask my co-chair.
So I looked around and I didn't see any of the particular studies that were commissioned. So if you're aware of any that came out of New York, I don't know if you submitted those as part of your testimony, because I haven't seen it yet. But if you've got anything coming out of Cuomo, that they any of the proposals, I'd love to look at it, try to get an inkling and envision what we're thinking about. My personal view is I'm trying to figure out numbers, sustainability, economic impact, and the financing models. And so, it's certainly would probably be the largest infrastructure project the state has ever engaged itself in that I'm aware of. And so you're either committing to development and growth where we think it's opportunistically going to happen, or where it already is happening. So we've got to look and figure out, like, if at the margin where this dollar is going and what kind of return we would expect from it. Those are kinds of things, any of these studies have to come back with. And I again, like my co-chair, I think throwing out the Clinton, and the Erie Canal, I mean, infrastructure projects were never shy in this country up until we finished 95. And it seems like we ran out of steam. So generically, infrastructure hasn't happened in a material way since the interstate system was built, and it's a problem. So I recognize that. So I appreciate the thought, and we'll see where we take this. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Mesker's comments. Yes, Senator Martin.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, gentlemen, for coming up and speaking to this. Great idea. I think thinking larger than life, I think is healthy for us. How many previous reports are you aware of that are out there that this work has already been done?
I mean, if we go back to 90 years, there's dozens. The Cuomo study, I'm happy to attach to the testimony, was done in 2017. It's an 88-page report, various locations. I'd say a good quarter of that report focuses on this exact span from Bridgeport to Northport in Suffolk County.
So would we be just updating that report along with any others? I don't want to reinvent the wheel, I guess.
Fair enough. It was done by New York, not Connecticut. Again, historically, New York's been the one going after these most of the time. So a refresh for modern times. And, I think there's tremendous benefit here on our side too, just with our traffic. 95, as mentioned, hasn't been updated. I mean, it would cost more to eminent domain a 4th lane in Fairfield County than to do this, and getting every car from Brooklyn, Queens, Long Island to not have them go from Greenwich to Bridgeport, which there was a study, Stanford to Bridgeport on 95 is the worst stretch of highway in the United States. I think it's something we should take a look at from a Connecticut perspective, maybe while refreshing the Cuomo study, but it's definitely a good baseline to start with. Again, it wasn't too long ago, 9 years ago.
And we're talking about Connecticut, New York, and I thought there was a third state that I missed.
Oh, no. The federal government would participate in something like this. You would think. I mean, it's a mess.
And you're talking about 14 miles. And do those reports, if you know, did they talk about the adverse environmental impact?
Yeah, it does. But if you factor in the CO2 savings from being able to make a 3-hour trip. Newsday sent reporters here from Long Island. It took them 3 hours from their office. It would have been 1 hour and 20 minutes if there was a bridge, right? So reducing, and that's coming up to Hartford, let alone a Bridgeport, would just be 20 minutes, and that's only going 40 over the bridge. I mean, you're saving a ton. I mean, the number, and obviously the study will show it, but it's a huge savings of emissions, huge. During construction, obviously construction makes noise. Animals don't like noise sometimes, but once it's built, the savings will be tremendous. I think you'll find in the study.
And who's going to be I guess you're asking for us to sort of move this bill forward, and someone's got to pay for the study. What's the cost of the study?
There was no cost associated to the bill. This is my first time testifying in Hartford, but I was told that it would go to appropriations and go from there. There's no cost associated with the bill in front of you.
Well, I think that there will be a cost, so, but we'll find out down the
Sure.
road. Okay. I have no further questions. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you very much, Senator Martin. Further comments from our Senator Summers?
Yes, thank you for your testimony. I do have some questions. We do have a very active and robust ferry system that runs from Connecticut, both in New London and Bridgeport, to New York. I am concerned about the environmental impacts. I'm also concerned on the cost, and I happen to represent a town that has a very large bridge, the Gold Star Bridge, that goes across the Thames River, and we can't seem to even maintain that, let alone a 14-mile long bridge. Do you know what the cost was for the study that was done by New York? I am not honestly interested in doing another super expensive study that then is going to go be put on a shelf. So I think it would be really important for this committee to know exactly what did New York spend on their study. If there's been 9 studies done on this and there's been no action, that leads me to believe that this may be very cost prohibitive, and who would be responsible for the maintenance, et cetera. I think there's a lot of questions to be flushed out before this bill could move forward. And so if you have that information and you could get that to this committee, it would be extremely helpful. And that's really all of the comments that I have at this point. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Summers. Comments? Yes, Senator Martin.
Yeah, just to get my arms around the cost of this. So I know Representative Hoxa mentioned, I thought 25 billion, or was it 50 billion? 50, and that was for 25 miles. So
For the 14.
I misspoke when I said 25. I was thinking about the furthest points.
all right, so are we looking at 25 billion for 14,
50 billion.
50 billion for 14 miles?
There's multiple variables, which is the point of the study. I think it would be good to have rail connecting the Long Island Railroad to Metro North.
Well, it might be a good idea to have it underground too. So
That's in
yeah,
it, right.
yeah.
There's so many variables
Yeah.
of the exact point where it's gonna land on either side.
So you're looking
Precise-
for the
there-
report to tell us which one of
There's
the
variables.
three?
Correct, correct. I mean, the Cuomo study from the Bridgeport location, I think threw out a number of only 20 billion if it was bridge only with no rail. But again, it's 9 years ago. So the
Sure.
point of the study is for us to gather this data and then make a decision.
Okay, understood. Thank you, guys. Oh,
Can I just?
yeah, absolutely.
Well, it's great to see all of you. This is an exciting day to come up to Hartford.
Certainly, we have.
Because Bill and I.
We have Tim Herbst in the building.
Bill and I agree, and it's exciting to be here, and it's good to see you all. I just wanted to touch on a few things first. I have some written testimony. I'm not going to read it. I'll submit it, so you have it. I just wanted to touch on some of the comments about cost with respect to the study. I think that when we talk about cost, obviously we're talking about the theoretical here, about theoretically, what would the feasibility be to construct a bridge that connects Long Island to New York? I think we also have to have a conversation about the practical. And the practical is, I'm 45 years old, and in my lifetime, living my entire life in the state of Connecticut, I can honestly say, speaking from actually seeing it, our traffic situation on 95 and the Merritt Parkway has not gotten better, it's gotten worse. And I can honestly say that we have been in a perpetual, constant construction and renovation of 95 and the Merritt Parkway. So we really, from a practical standpoint, have 2 options that we have to look at if we're going to talk about cost. We can look at the actual of whether it's a bridge or a tunnel and what that will cost, or we're going to have to look at what it's going to cost to create a 4-lane highway on 95, the costs of eminent domain. Frankly, what I believe would be cost prohibitive permitting associated with doing that, but we're going to have to look at it because there's too much stress right now on 95 and the Merritt Parkway. That is not an opinion, it's a fact. People see it, they live it, they sit in traffic for 3 hours a day sometimes.
I know Representative Meskers, when my firm represents your town of Greenwich, and I know when I drive down to Greenwich and back to Branford, I feel like I've been put through 14 rounds. It's a real stressful situation. So I think when we look at cost, we have to do a comparative of what it would cost to implement bridge, tunnel versus making the needed enhancements to 95 or the merit. I also think when we talk about return on investment, if we're going to spend money, and I'm a fiscal conservative, so I say this to my colleagues on the Republican side, if we're going to spend money, we have to get return on our investment. And if we're going to get return on our investment with opening economic markets in Bridgeport from Long Island, creating jobs, by extension, bringing people to Bridgeport, increasing housing in Bridgeport, it's not only good for Bridgeport, it's good for the entire region. It's great for Fairfield County. Also, we now have an airport in New Haven that has commercial traffic. It's really refreshing to be able to drive 12 minutes from my house in Branford to get on a plane to go to Florida. So thank you for doing that. I deal with planes that fly over my house every day, but it's part of providing a service that I think was really needed for Southwestern Connecticut. I think that if we have a bridge or a tunnel, you're going to see a situation where people who would otherwise go to LaGuardia or Kennedy, who want to avoid the traffic, would, if they couldn't get a flight out of Islip, they'd come over the bridge. They could get a flight out of Tweed, New Haven. It really is unbelievable that sometimes it is shorter for me to fly from Palm Beach to LaGuardia than it is for me to drive from LaGuardia back to my house. The commute's actually shorter. So I think it's worth study. I think it has economic benefits. I think it has benefits for our tourism industry. There's no reason why Connecticut cannot and should not compete with Cape Cod, Rhode Island, the Vineyard, the Hamptons. I think having that opportunity to connect the two would do a lot for our tourism industry as well. I think it's worth study. I agree we shouldn't be spending money for the sake of spending it. If we're going to study it, there should be a plan to do something. I think the study should be parallel with what it would cost to, widen 95, which I think would be cost prohibitive. I think it would actually cost more, but I think a study would help us make those assessments so we could come up with an action plan of how to implement. And now I'm going to turn it over to my former colleague and neighbor to the south, Mayor Finch.
I don't really have too much to add, and I know that you guys want to get going. The weather's getting bad, but Senator Martin, I really want to thank you for talking about the unknown, because we don't know what we're talking about right now. We have a concept, we have a vision, the same way that President Eisenhower had a vision in the 50s under the National Defense Transportation Act to create highways everywhere connecting all of our cities. And we know that now one of the reasons why America is so powerful is because we're connected by a wonderful network of transportation. I dare say that when President Eisenhower had this idea, there weren't detractors because there are so many unknowns. I had the privilege of working for the state of New York as the director of the New York State Thruway Authority. And it was during the time we were building the Mario Cuomo Bridge. And I don't know that a lot of people understand this, but when they started to build the bridge, they didn't know how much it was going to cost. The state had created legislation that was not design bid build, but design build. So the designers and the construction companies had to put one bid in. And to win the bid, they had to have 30% drawings. But they didn't have the geotechnical, they didn't have a lot of this stuff. So they winged it a little bit, saying that it's going to cost between 3 and 4 billion. Now, the wonderful thing they had was they knew the beginning and end point because it was parallel to the Tappan Zee Bridge. We don't know where it's going to go because we don't know. You mentioned bridge and tunnel. That's a wonderful proposal, but we don't know how that's going to pan out when the engineers take a look at it. There's so many considerations, environmental, transportation, economic, but I can tell you one thing. When we were working on that bridge every day, day in and day out, we saw workers, and I represent those workers, taking home really good paychecks with benefits and retirement benefits. It was an amazing thing to see so many people. It was the largest infrastructure project in the United States at the time. And they said we couldn't do it. They said it was going to cost $8 billion and take 8 years. We did it in under $4 billion in 4 years. And it's a testimony to thinking big and having a governor that backed the bureaucrats up and the engineers up. And nobody's put a glove on that project. It was one of the most successful things we as America have done in a long time. And it's right in our backyard. And when former Speaker Amon came to me and said, what do you think your members think about this? Well, building trades just want to work. Electricians just want to go to work every day. Wherever we can help them go to work, it's a home run. But when I started thinking about it, I thought, wow, this is really the Mario Cuomo Bridge. It's just a little bit longer. That was 3.1 miles. The shortest route I think we have here is about 9.5 miles that it can be done, or 10 miles. We don't know if that's the best. We don't know if it's all bridge. We don't know if it's bridge and tunnel. We don't know the environmental considerations, but we do know that the idea is exciting. And the idea has a lot of interest behind it for people who want to, as you said, think out of the box. We don't know. I mean, the commissioner is here. It'd be great to see whether or not he has any available funding for studies that's already on the books not being used. The Appropriations Committee, I know Senator Roston moves things around a lot at the last minute to try to get things done from available funding. If you think a study like this is worth $500,000, it's certainly going to create a heck of a lot more ripple effect all throughout our thought process in the legislative. I saw it in New York, and I saw it do great things in New York, and I'd love to see it do that kind of thing here in Connecticut.
Yeah. Well, I'd like to see some great things done here in the state of Connecticut as well. If you guys can just give us a ballpark as to what type of cost that this study would cost us if we're going to be taking the lead on this, because I don't know if you guys, this doesn't sound like you actually have talked to New York yet, but obviously we are going to need to talk to them. So if you guys can tell us, give us a range, that would be extremely helpful. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Martin. Yes, Representative Heffernan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for your testimony. I think you bring up some good points. I think it's worth the conversation personally. Just a quick question. How long does it take to build a 14-mile bridge?
Well, it took us 4 years to build a 3.1 mile bridge. We'll have to take a guess. We don't know. I mean, that's one of the things the study would probably
help us
answer that.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, sir. Further questions?
Not quick enough.
Thank you all for being with us today. Much appreciated.
Can we just ask for them to give their name and information to the clerk so we can get their names on the record?
Oh, everyone knows their names. Thank you very much. Okay, is it Ginny Kolowski with us from the Lodging Association? She's remote, I think. Ginny, she here? 12? Oh, okay. Elias Peterson? Mr. Peterson from the American Green Fuels? No. Okay, Mary. Oh, you are here? I don't, oh, it's online.
Yes, Senator Hartley.
For the record, just your name, please.
Yes, Senator Hartley. My name is Mary Falvey.
Yes.
Senator Hartley, Representative Meskers, and members of the Commerce Committee. My name is Mary Falvey. I am the president of Connecticut Preservation Action, the nonprofit advocacy group that promotes historic preservation in the state, as well as the executive director of the Hartford Preservation Alliance. I'm here before you this afternoon to respectfully request that when you raise Senate Bill 307 from your committee, that you do so without Section 15. The preservation community stands firmly behind the staff of the State Historic Preservation Office, but the possible diversion of up to 50% of our Community Investment Act funds strikes at the very core of the intended use of this funding. Grant funding for projects that serve to promote, protect cherished community assets, and in return, help in stabilizing neighborhoods and communities, making Connecticut a place that attracts and retains businesses and jobs. While Commissioner O'Keefe claims that this is a creative, budget-neutral solution to a potential cut in federal funding, it is certainly not revenue neutral for the communities and the projects that the Community Investment Act was designed to serve. Community organizations such as the Mattituck Museum, the YMCA's Naugatuck in Greenwich, the Thomaston Opera House, the Killingworth Congregational Church, and the Bristol Public Library, just to name a very, very few, have benefited from grants that have helped them preserve, restore, and rehabilitate their buildings. And in doing so, they have also preserved the important roles they play in the vitality of our state's community development and economy. Again, we are in total support of our SHPO staff, but believe the interests of the state would be better served if any shortfall in national funding is made up from the general fund. Thank you for allowing me this time.
Mary, thank you very much. Thank you for your leadership in historic preservation over the years. And yes, as we had indicated previously, because there are other sections, many sections of this bill, this being one of them, which will be closely vetted. I do appreciate your testimony. And you have provided written testimony to the committee, have you, Mary?
Yes, I have.
Okay, that's important. Comments? Seeing none, I'd like to call Jenny Kowalski. Is she with us online, Madam Clerk? That's number 11. Yeah. Yeah. Okay, Mr. Peterson.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, Chairman Meskers, and members of the Commerce Committee. My name is Elias Peterson, and I am Vice President General Counsel for Colmar Americas, here today representing Colmar and our subsidiary American Green Fuels in support of House Bill 5319 and opposing Senate Bill 307 solely as it relates to the repeal of Section 32324A of the General Statutes. American Green Fuels is a 55 million gallon per year biodiesel production facility located at the Port of New Haven. We employ more than 50 people at the plant and hundreds more in indirect economic activity. The plant utilizes waste feedstocks such as used cooking oil to produce a renewable fuel that results in up to a 39% reduction in greenhouse gas emissions compared to traditional petroleum diesel. The plant began construction in 2011, utilizing a supporting grant from DECD, and produced our first gallon in 2013. Originally a 10 million gallon per year nameplate capacity plant, Colmar has invested tens of millions into capacity expansions and other improvements, turning it into a world-class facility that it is today. We support House Bill 5319 and any and all policies that support R&D investments. This legislature supported the expansion of the biodiesel industry back in 2021 by implementing a low carbon fuel requirement for home heating oil sold in Connecticut. We now hope to see the implementation of an incentive to support the increased usage of biodiesel in the on-road transportation sector, ideally with some sort of tax incentive. Our opposition to Senate Bill 307, though, relates solely to the elimination of the Connecticut Qualified Biodiesel Producer Incentive Account. While this account has been inactive for many years, we encourage this committee to keep it in place as a ready option to support biodiesel production in Connecticut in the future. The industry has a bright future and an important role in helping our state achieve its decarbonization goals. And we just ask the committee to keep all options open as we seek to expand the use of biodiesel in our state. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. And so, Eliza, can you tell me what section is the 32-324, please?
It is the last section in the bill. Section 33.
Okay. Thank you very much. Appreciate your testimony. And if there are no comments from my colleagues, we will invite Jenny Kowalski, if she is still with us.
I'm still here. Good
Yes.
afternoon, Senator
Called you
Hartley.
times, but now it's for real. Go ahead.
It's real. Good afternoon, Senator Hartley, Representative Meskers, and distinguished members of the committee. My name is Jenny Kozlowski, and I'm the Executive Director of the Connecticut Lodging Association. We represent hotels, inns, resorts, and bed and breakfasts across the state. On behalf of our members, I'm pleased to express the Connecticut Lodging Association's support of SB 305, an act concerning tourism. We appreciate the committee's recognition that tourism is a critical driver of Connecticut's economy and that a coordinated, data-informed strategy is essential to maintaining and growing our competitive position. Tourism supports tens of thousands of jobs across our state, generates substantial state and local tax revenue, and fuels economic activity in communities large and small. The lodging industry plays a foundational role in this ecosystem. Hotels, inns, resorts, and bed and breakfasts are often the first and last point of contact for our visitors. Our industry not only provides accommodation, but also supports restaurants, attractions, cultural institutions, small businesses, higher education, and healthcare facilities throughout Connecticut. SB 305's establishment of a working group to prepare a comprehensive report on tourism strategy and coordination is an important and constructive step forward. While the Connecticut Lodging Association supports the established working group outlined in SB 305, we respectfully suggest expanding its membership to include representation from the lodging industry, including hotels and bed and breakfasts, as well as other key tourism-related sectors. Our recommendation is intended to complement, not replace or diminish, the participants identified in the bill. By broadening the established working group to include additional on-the-ground tourism stakeholders, the committee can ensure that the resulting report reflects a comprehensive, data-informed, and fully collaborative statewide tourism strategy. As you know, Connecticut competes with neighboring states that are aggressively investing in tourism marketing and destination development. A well-informed, inclusive planning process will better position our state to grow visitation, support jobs, and strengthen our overall economy. We respectfully support SB 305 and urge consideration of expanding the established working group to include lodging and other key tourism sectors. Thank you for your time today and your consideration. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much, Ginny. Thank you also for your diligent work in supporting
Thank you.
the state of Connecticut, which is a very important pillar of the economy. We've been kind of dancing around the edges here with proposals about taking the 1% on the meals tax and getting it to the industry for a couple of sessions now. That has not happened. We also have similar bills before us again this year. Long story short, this is about, if that does not happen, rolling up our sleeves and getting some consensus so we absolutely stop the wait and move forward. So thank you, Ginny. And are there comments from my colleagues? Yes. Representative Meskers, go ahead.
Ginny, what would be helpful is if from your association, I'd like to know what specific spends that you see in the generation of tourism, or specific strategies that the industry feels are successful in spurring more stays in the lodging industry. So, we're going to get a working group, and it's going to be a working group of multiple people. I'd like to know the advocacy directly. Is it promotion of websites, promotion of events? Is it where do we think we can drive occupancy and the satisfaction in the tourist industry? So anything you see in the way of studies that are specific?
Yes.
I don't read all of the lodging magazine.
No.
So anything you have there would be helpful.
I'll be happy to share. There's been a lot of current research done post-COVID, and it's changed some of the demographics of who comes to visit, how long they stay. So I'll be happy to share that with you.
Yeah, and importantly, where the dollar spend is.
Correct.
Convince them to do it in Connecticut. So any kind of targeted effectiveness, I'm looking, it's always difficult to grab onto a dollar in Connecticut to do what we want to do. And here I'm asking is, what do we want to do? So I want to make sure we get some targeted ideas. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Representative Meskers. Thank you very much, Ginny. Further comments? Seeing none. We'll move on. It's Scott Dolch, who was going to be remote. It's not with us. And so we'll move on to Mary Wick from the Lodging Association. Are you with us?
I am.
Okay. Ms. Wick, please proceed.
Yeah, good afternoon, Senator Hartley, Representative Meskers, and the rest of the distinguished committee. Since Ginny just went right before me, and we both share the responsibility of the Connecticut Lodging Association. I'm the board president of the Connecticut Lodging Association, as Ginny said, representing inns, resorts, and bed and breakfasts. I also am a small business owner. I own 2 inns in Westbrook, Connecticut. So I have firsthand knowledge of the impact of tourism and how it supports not only me, but also the employees who work for me. As Ginny mentioned, we are eager as an association to support SB 305, an act concerning tourism. We appreciate the recognition and believe that a study would be hugely beneficial. There have been many different times, as you have mentioned, Senator Hartley, that tourism investment has come up and where we could resource dollars for these kinds of activities. We believe strongly that the investment in tourism would help tax revenue, specifically for lodging. Of course, you know that 15% tax is the highest occupancy tax in the country, and you can generate significant incremental revenue. And by focusing on tourism, we look to generate that revenue from non-state residents, bringing in incremental revenue through tourism targeting. As Ginny mentioned also, there are close to 65,000 employees across the tourism industry. And so focusing on jobs, particularly if we could understand how to focus on tourism to bring more year-round visitors and less seasonality, that then puts burden for these employees who sometimes find themselves on unemployment going into the off season. And then also to strengthen our valuable arts and culture. So we feel very passionately about this group. And as Ginny mentioned, we really do hope that besides the amazing group that has been identified to be part of this, that also you consider having lodging, bed and breakfast, inns and resorts well represented. I'm happy to pause and take any questions.
Thank you very much. Yes, Representative Aniskowicz.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I just wanted no questions, no really long comments. Just wanted to say hello to Mary and thank you for your testimony today. I do attend many chamber events with her, and she's a very big proponent of, promoting commerce, promoting things that, are positive in our state. So I just wanted to thank her for that. And also, as a small business owner, I know this is very important to her. So thank you for your testimony. It's great to see you.
Thanks so much, Representative Aniskowicz.
Thank you, Representative Aniskowicz. Mayor, thank you for being with us. At this point, I'm going to invite Scott Dolch if he's with us. I know we missed him a moment ago. Are you there, Scott?
I am here, Senator. Can you hear me?
I do hear you, sir. Speed talk.
I apologize of not being on before the 2 different committees. So Senator Hartley, Representative Meskers, Senator Martin, Representative Aniskowicz, and members of the Commerce Committee. As you guys know, Scott Dolch here, President and CEO of the now Connecticut Restaurant and Hospitality Association. On behalf of Connecticut's 9,100 restaurants and nearly 400 hotels, the association appreciates the opportunity to testify in support of Senate Bill 305. The CRHA recently expanded its mission to include hotel partners. Just a few weeks ago, our restaurants unifying our industry. And just to give you guys some numbers so you guys know, we have 170,000 jobs. We contribute $21 billion in economic impact when you add the 2 industries together. And also to the state, $1.5 billion in sales and use tax and occupancy tax combined, when the occupancy tax is 170 million just last year, and the sales and use tax about 1.25 to 1.3 billion. While SB 05 proposes a working group to study statewide marketing and tourism, our industry believes it is time for decisive action and a direct investment in Connecticut's tourism. We are advocating for a minimum budget of $20 million, given the immense economic impact that I mentioned before from our industry. When our state's Office of Tourism is properly funded, they have the necessary tools to compete on a regional and national level to attract visitors to our great state. In recent years, our businesses have had to overcome numerous challenges, such as a global pandemic, spiking inflation, worker shortages, and more. Increasing tourism funding will reinvest hospitality tax revenue back into the sector that produces it, helping these local small businesses that in recent years have fought to keep their doors open and keep Connecticut residents employed. This is a common sense plan to support local economies and small businesses in our hospitality workforce. It would aid an industry in need while simultaneously stimulating local economies throughout our state. I was, just to finish, you can read through my whole testimony. I'm actually down here in Stamford today. Had a meeting with about 60 operators, hotel and restaurants in downtown, and with Stamford downtown, and just talking about, and everything was about tourism and how we need to reinvest. And one of the things I would say to the committee as well, just as an update, is what I've learned in the 2 weeks since expanding with hotels is, restaurants rely on about 30 to 35% of their business are outside tourists that come in and eat at their restaurants. From a hotel side, it's flipped on its head. It's about 70% of people staying, and we all know this because you don't usually stay in a hotel nearby, are coming from outside the state, outside the region. And then why it's so important that we need to invest in dollars that get people to these 400 properties around our state. And then in turn, it benefits our restaurants because you guys all know when you travel and stay in a hotel, you are not bringing typically food with you. You're looking to eat out and support the local restaurants in the area. So I appreciate the time today to testify on SB 305, and I welcome any questions.
Thank you, Scott, and strength in numbers. So we look forward to working with you as we have in the past. And this really, this proposal and bill that you're testifying on is about trying to move the needle and stop the conversation. Further comments from my colleagues? Yes, Representative Meskers.
So Scott, question for you, because you have the number in front of you mentally more than I do often. The 1% meals tax generates about what at the margin now?
Last I checked, they did $120 million in fiscal year 25, $114 million in fiscal year 24. Over the course since 2019, it has done about $550 million to the general fund, just the 1% alone.
But okay, run rate between 110 and 125, we'll say, depending on the price of the meals. Okay. Second thing, I asked the prior group, and I want this from you as well. Conceptually, I'm assuming you read more restaurant things than I ever want to read in my life in terms of trade industry journals. So what I want to know is if we think about the 20 million, and I'm not handing you the checkbook by any stretch of the imagination, but I'd like to know where you think the spend to generate incremental revenue from your restaurant and now lodging the hospitality industry. So, what effectively gets more people into the state? What effectively gets more purchases going? There's got to be some point, I think, personally, on infrastructure, but I want to know what you think in terms of websites or booking or, things to do in Connecticut. I'd love some creative ideas. And like I said, you're not getting the checkbook, but I'd like to be kicked with some appropriate ideas. So thanks on that.
No, Representative, it's such a good question. I think it's a bigger conversation than just dollars. I think the conversation, which is what I applaud the committee about talking about a task force and what the future of our tourism office should look like. And I think the first and foremost, it starts with people. I know, unfortunately, Anthony is no longer with us as our chief marketing officer, but I think he did a great job. And I think his staff is phenomenal. But I also think bigger discussions need to be had about the people first and their roles and their responsibilities about bringing people into the state. It's not just putting billboards up or sending out commercials. Obviously, that's a part of the bigger picture, but it's also who's out there pitching the NCAA basketball to come and play in People's Bank Arena? Who's out there pitching conferences and business conferences to come to our casinos or to come to other parts of the state? So I think it's really important that the leaders, like myself, get together and talk about, look at best practices around the country. But I would say those dollars, it's not just going to a ad budget and a marketing budget. We're going to get a return. Obviously, we would increase our budget, just so everyone knows. Even at $20 million, we're in one of the highest advertising budgets places in the world, with New York and Boston, and just how far our dollar doesn't travel as far as some other states, unfortunately. But that obviously is a part of it. But I also think when you look at some of the other groups, you look at, the CT Meetings group and what Bob Murdoch, I think he testified today, what their job and responsibility, how they can work together. Because I think our tourism office needs to be at the forefront of being looked at as a leader and who's leading that charge, and also utilizing the resources for travel and bringing people in, taking our staff out to go and try to pitch people to come to Connecticut. And I think that would be my ask of how we would utilize these dollars. I think that's where I hope the task force is also, as we talk about what the future of our, tourism office looks like in 2027 and beyond. And some other states that have done it really well. I think we could learn from them and be hopefully successful in years to come.
Well, that was longer than I anticipated, and I appreciate the criticism of building the website first before we figure out a plan, because that's probably a pragmatic advice. So don't worry, it's taken well into consideration. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Meskers. Thank you, Scott. And the point of this bill before us is exactly what you point out. We are at an inflection point right here, and we need to build the foundation. We have the opportunity to do that here, and that's the intention of this proposal before us. Look forward to working with you on this as we go forward. Further questions, comments? Seeing none. Thank you again, Scott, for being with us. And
thank you as always for having me.
Yes, we will just begin our work now on this. Next is Melvin Graham with us from Faith Community Initiative. Oh, is Tony here? Tony, pardon me. Okay, I didn't see your name or number on these stickies. Yes, please. Yeah.
Good afternoon, Senator Hartley, Senator Martin, Representative Yanukovych, Representative Meskers. Thanks so much for having me here today. On behalf of the Eastern Advanced Manufacturing Alliance, I urge passage of House Bill 5319, an act concerning a research and development tax credit for small businesses. Know-how is Connecticut's secret sauce, right? I mean, there are some things that make Connecticut an expensive place to do business. Energy costs, unaffordable housing, so forth, so on. But we have a lot of smart people here in the state, and manufacturing is a great place to put that know-how to work to benefit people in the state. As you probably know, manufacturing is a constant process of invention and innovation. You cannot do manufacturing without research and development. Manufacturing is a process that takes an idea and puts it into physical form. And I actually had a visit this morning to one of the member companies, Acme Wire, down in Stonington, and it was just great to see what they were doing. A customer comes to them and says, well, we're trying to do this. For example, you're making a lacrosse mask. You need a wire plate in the front to protect the person's face. And they have a design, but there's no guarantee that that design can actually be made. So what they need to do is research and development to say, how do you take this function and turn it into an object? That's a constant cost in manufacturing. And larger companies, this has been mentioned earlier today, larger companies have the wherewithal to do that. Smaller companies, it really cuts into their margin. So this small subsidy to the small businesses to improve their research and development makes those companies more competitive. They recruit customers they sign up customers from all over the US, all over the world. And if they can keep their prices lower by having a slight subsidy on the research and development cost, which is always part of a product, that gives them an advantage. It's really fair to smaller businesses to give them this opportunity. Many of these smaller businesses are owned in what, pass-through form, LLCs, S corps. They've been excluded from this tax credit in the past. And as I just mentioned, it is a real boon to the state's competitiveness. Therefore, I urge passage of this Act 5319. Happy to respond to any questions or comments.
Thank you, Tony. And I believe that you were before us also with at the Manufacturing Caucus, and we really appreciate your advocacy. This has been a proposal before this committee for a number of years. We are not abandoning it because we do believe in it firmly, because it is very targeted to the universe that has hitherto before not been part of this benefit, and they are the backbone of our economy, clearly. Comments? Yes, Representative Meskers.
I think the last time you spoke, I criticized or asked you whether you were doing it off the cuff or had printed testimony.
I did submit printed
Good, and I hope this time as well.
Yeah, I did.
Because you're insightful, and my memory is short, so that's I appreciate it. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate your testimony, questions, and if not, once again, thanks and travel safe. So I'm not sure, Madam Administrator, if okay. Okay, thank you for that. And is there anybody else with us who is seeking to address the committee? If not, we will stand adjourned. Appreciate everybody, and please travel safe. Thank you.
And Patricia, potentially encourage them to submit written testimony if he ever gets through to you at some level.